Hey crafty friends, it's Joy here for Honeybee Stamps, and I made this just super cute Easter card using the Storybook Spring Stamp and Die. Now this is an older release that I'm using, but I just think it's so cute. I'm going to start by squishing on my work surface Shabby Shutters, Bundled Sage, and Old Paper Distress Oxide ink. I spritzed it with a little bit of water. And I am tapping my A2 size piece of watercolor cardstock. This is Bristol Smooth watercolor cardstock. And I pressed that into the ink, spritzed it with a little bit more water just to kind of move that ink around. And now I'm just going to take my heat tool and get that nice and dry. I'm going to place that in my MISTI, and I am using the Vintage Flora background stamp. This is so cute. Tons of spring images and postcard or postmark type images on here. And I'm going to ink that up with tea dye ink, Distress Oxide ink. I didn't want this to be a really dark background. And the tea dye is kind of like vintage photo to me, but to the pinker side rather than to the orange side. So I'm going to give that a nice good press down, and then we have this great background. Now I'm going to take my distress sprayer and spritz it with some more water because I want to blur a little bit of the background. You may not notice it so much on camera, but I could in person. But adding some water in some areas, letting it kind of blur the lines, blur the words, just soften everything a little bit, and then I'm just going to dab off the excess water. Then after that's dry, I dried it with my heat tool again. I am going to splatter it with the tea dye ink. I added water to it, and I'm using my paintbrush, and I'm kind of doing heavy splatter, but more in concentrated areas. I'm also going to bring in Bundled Sage and do the same thing. Not quite as heavy, but I do want to get a nice good green splatter on this background. And then when I'm done, I'm going to set this aside to dry, and we can start working on our cute little images from the Storybook Spring stamp set. I am going to ink that up with some black ink on watercolor cardstock. You want to make sure that your ink is watercolor friendly. I will be using some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color the bunny, the two butterflies, and this pretty floral wreath. So now that I have that nice and inked up, I am going to come in with my green. I just picked kind of purples, violets, a teal for the butterflies, just kind of a olive green, I think is what I picked for all of the leaves. Really super simple coloring. But I love this watercolor look. I think it's so soft and so pretty, and it's really kind of fast coloring. It doesn't take too long, and I'm not too fussy about it. I do add my darkest area, usually at the base of the leaves or the base of the flower petals, and then use the water on my paintbrush to blend it out. So then you have a dark area and a light area. So you get this two-toned look. So now we have our leaves done. Let's do our little, I think these are called like trumpet flowers or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys know. If you guys know, definitely let me know down in the comments. But I'm just going to color those. Again, blending with a little bit of water on my paintbrush, not a lot. I don't want to soak this. I just want my brush wet enough that it's going to move that ink around. These flowers are going to be pretty light. This whole card feels very light to me, which is what I was going for. I don't want anything too dark, although I do bring in these really bright pink little itty bitty flowers on here, but I felt like it was okay to do that because they were so small, and it still kept it pretty light. Let me add this yellowy green to the centers of those flowers, or a greenish yellow actually is what it is. And I added the tiniest dot of this really bright, it's actually purple, even though it looks very pink, but it's labeled purple on the Zig marker. Let's add this turquoise green to the butterflies. I thought this would pop against everything else on the background, a lot of greens and these really light violets. And then I'm using a green gray on this really cute bunny. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to the ears and a little bit of pink to the cheeks after I get his face and his upper body blended. But as you can see, even though this is sped up, the coloring really didn't take too long. It really blends nicely. I love Zig watercolor markers. I just think they are a real easy medium to work with. I'm going to add a little bit more to darken up the cute bunny here. I'm blending it to the inside of his ears a little bit, blending it into that really light pink that I added. I used the coordinating dies to die cut all of the images out, and I am going to do something crazy. I'm going to dip my images in the tea dye. Now, I used watercolor so that my background is going to be a little bit water reactive, but I'm going to let it do its thing. It's going to move some of the color on the flowers, a little bit on the bunny, but I just dried it really quick and I didn't do a ton, but it really softened it and kind of took away that white that was going on in the background. And then I splattered it with that tea dye ink. For the background, I'm going to tear the edges. I'm going to leave the edges white. I'm not going to ink blend those or add any distressing to that other than just tearing down the sides. And then I'm adding 2mm foam adhesive behind the wreath, 1mm foam adhesive behind the bunny, and then 2mm foam adhesive behind the sentiment. I stamped the sentiment with black ink, and I'm going to be using the coordinating die to die cut that out as well. Let's add a little bit of this lower profile 1mm foam adhesive behind the bunny because I want him tucked behind the wreath. I do end up moving him because I'm going to tuck his other ear behind the flower actually. You could leave it on top and that's cute too, but I do want him tucked a little bit more. So I needed to pick him back up and then I can slide him under and give a little bit more room for the sentiment that we're going to place there on the right. So there is that sentiment that I stamped. Sorry, I did not do that on camera. But I just used black ink and my Misty and then use the coordinating die to die cut it out. Let's pop that into place. And then we need to add our darling little butterflies. And I'm going to do 2mm foam adhesive behind these guys as well. And I love this pop of turquoise. I think it's so pretty and just adds that little something extra to this. Even though I think this is really beautiful, all the muted tones, but this just brings a little bit of life to it. And that card is finished. How cute is this? Super easy to do. Really a lot of fun to color, and I think that bunny is so darling. So what a fun little sweet Easter card, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a really amazing day.